But are those energy centers, the first three energy centers, bad? No, they're not bad at all. Those three centers are centers of survival. And if you're going to cause a species to exist into perpetuity, you make procreation really pleasurable so that you do it. If the second center has a lot to do with consumption and safety, then it makes sense that when you feel safe and you have food and shelter, it's in balance. But it also means that consumption of food can be really pleasurable as well. And when you take on challenges in your life and you really succeed in them, it takes energy to even get up and get out of bed. You use your third center. But all of these three centers are consumers of energy, drawing from the vital field. It's an expenditure of the life force in the body. Third center is really the ceiling of the ego. That's power. And Tolkien's books about, Lord of the Rings, the ring was power. And throwing the ring meant giving up power and for something greater. And it's love. That's the greater frequency. So each one of them have their own frequency. And all frequency carries information. Frequency, energy, has an intent. And when energy moves into any one of these centers, systems begin to change. When the first center switches on because there's energy in there, that center, the energy that activates the brain in that center, produces a mind in that center. Because consciousness or energy moving through neurological tissue is mind. When neurological tissue gets activated, all of a sudden there's a mind there. So when the first center gets activated, it has a mind of its own. And if the second center is activated, or the third center, or the fourth, when you're coming from different centers, there's a different consciousness or a different intent. And when energy makes it to the fourth center, though, now it's no longer the consumption, but there's the expansion of energy. This is the bridge that starts us to connect to our divinity. And connecting to that, putting your attention on it, not only creates heart coherence, but it produces a host of biological chemicals that are released, 1,400 different chemicals that begin to restore and repair the body. When you feel gratitude, when you feel love, when you feel freedom, this is a different frequency. When you care for another, this is where selflessness starts. This is all selfish. Now, can you activate this center? And when you activate this center, can you make love to somebody? Doing it in a giving way. The consciousness is different than just when it's from the first center. You understand? So then when you have two coming together as one, and there's true love, and it's done in that vein, in that way, that manner, then there's a beautiful exchange of energy, and there's a growth, or there's a summation of energy. It's not the opposite. So as energy, an enormous amount of energy sits in the first center. When energy can move into the second center, as I said, because you feel safe, and when you feel safe in your environment, your body's more in balance, and you can consume and metabolize and digest and secrete and eliminate. All those biological functions take place in the second center. When you become compromised in your environment, and when there's a threat or there's danger, and the environment becomes unsafe, then all of a sudden the autonomic nervous system says, move all the energy you can, because this is how you're going to take care of the body. And of course, now you're a body local in space and time. So many people have most of their energy by thinking and feeling in the first three centers, as we said. And the incoherence that's created in the brain, the emotions that are stored in the first three centers for years of unconsciously thinking and feeling the same way, is taking thought and storing as energy in one of these lower centers. So then, if you're living in the survival world, then it takes a lot to open your heart, because it goes against the survival gene. You don't want to open your heart in survival, because you would be prey. You would be vulnerable. You wouldn't even sit still, close your eyes, go within. All of that goes contrary to the act of really opening your heart. It's just not a good time to do that. And people focus on matter when they're in that state. And so doing this work in getting energy into your heart. When I was at the Heart Math Institute like 10 years ago, and we were looking at all the research together, I looked at all the research. And the heart, once the energy makes it to the heart acts as an amplifier. Once it makes it here, the energy goes all the way up, all the way to the brain, right to the thalamic gate, right into the brain, and the brain starts going into greater degrees of coherence. In fact, we have brain scans that hopefully we'll show you this week where people are in super coherence, really high level of coherence in their brain, because as they start moving energy into their heart, the brain can take on more energy. Now here's the cool part. The energy that they feel in their brain, what we measure is in delta, is in theta, is in alpha, is in beta, is in high beta, and is in gamma. It's a really organized brain. Now, I'm building this model because not all of the pieces, how you described it, fit. So then, what we've seen, and we were just looking at brain scans during the morning break, when you see a person relaxing, doing this work and surrendering and letting go a little bit more, all of that is switching on the parasympathetic nervous system, the nervous system of growth and repair, the nervous system of relaxation. And so some people are tuned up into the sympathetic nervous system their whole life, and they don't even know they're there. It's just the way they are. But when you start relaxing and you start opening up and you start connecting to that energy because your attention is on it, and your nervous system starts to begin to slow down, when you start getting those really organized low alpha brainwave patterns, low theta brainwave patterns, you're losing a level of awareness that begins to open that thalamic gate, because that gate is closed up most of the time in survival. So as you start relaxing, it starts opening up. You start opening up, and the parasympathetic nervous system carrying those coherent theta wave patterns, those waves start to summate. They start to build on one another. And right off of that theta brainwave pattern, the low alpha, here comes gamma. Body's so relaxed that it can become excited. And when that sympathetic nervous system switches on and that gate opens up, the brain goes into those high gamma brainwave patterns. Now, I want to give you an understanding of how high those gamma brainwave patterns are. If we took a group of people like this, everybody in the room, and we measured eyesight, or we measured hearing, or we measured intelligence, or we measured pancreatic enzymes, out of every person in this room, we would see, whether we were measuring eyesight or hearing or height or whatever, we would see this curve called the Z-curve. Are you with me? Come on. Now, the Z-curve looks just like a symmetrical mountain. And if you draw a line right down the center of that mountain, that's called normal. That's where most of the people are. And because the curve is the highest in the middle, that means most of the population falls within normal. Now, if you were to draw that line and then divide it like with equal lines out, you would see that you would have the majority of the people, about 63% or so, 64%, falling either one slot, one standard deviation above, or one slot, one standard deviation below. But our students are 200 standard deviations outside of normal, so that's how much energy is in their brain. Now that isn't just one case. We have cases already. So 200, 300, 400, 500 standard deviations outside of normal. Now, the energy in the first center is rolled up energy. And when you do the breath and you squeeze, you begin to unravel that energy. You begin to unravel it. And when that energy unravels, all of that energy that's sitting there begins to, as it moves up, begins to get more and more intense because it's passing through different frequencies. And when it reaches the brain, and the arousal of the sympathetic nervous system is ejaculating the life force that you use to make a child. Instead of going out, now it's going up. And when it reaches the brain, that's a lot of energy, that's a lot of life force in the brain. And now the person goes into that super aroused state. You won't see 200 standard deviations outside of normal in many neuroscience studies because it's just so outside of the normal. But we've measured it over and over again. In fact, we can predict when it's going to happen. We were just looking at this person's beautiful, really organized theta. Well, when we see that, we know that theta is going to carry gamma. We just know it. We just know that that person's so coherent, so orderly, that their harmonics, They're frequencies that build on other frequencies, and that's exactly how the energy centers work. They're frequencies that build on frequencies. So as you're blessing your energy centers and resting your attention in different one of those spaces and the space around, not only are you creating coherence in here, but in addition to that, as you connect them, your act of becoming conscious and connecting and aligning and attuning and feeling it move is creating the very neurological networks to invite the experience to happen automatically, naturally. And as you begin to open this pathway, energy will begin to shift. And the blockage of energy, you will feel as a sensation in your body. And you'll feel it as like a pit in your gut. And when you have a bunch of sensations in your body, like you're feeling irritated and hot, and you feel your heart rate, the accumulation of those sensations or feelings is called an emotion. Now you name it as anger, frustration. So we give names to emotions, but they're really just physiological sensations of the body many times being out of balance. So all of this incoherence, when it starts getting orderly, starts getting more coherent, begins to allow energy to build on the previous center, and build on the previous center, and build on the previous center. And when those centers are aligned and attuned, you have a very coherent, healthy body. And people who have done this work and blessing the energy centers, they're in this room. They've healed themselves of all kinds of crazy health conditions that the doctors had no solution for. People who have chronic bladder infection, prostate, any condition in any one of these lower centers, ovarian tumors. The energy starts to move, or there's balance in these centers, doing the breath and beginning to disturb that energy. As that energy begins to unwind, it just becomes pure energy that wants to go back from whence it came, to the brain as a thought. And so fear that's stored in the body can turn into freedom in 1 second. It's the movement of energy, and you will feel it. And many times when you do this properly, people pass out. It's happened to me thousands of times. And they come up to the stage and they say, I passed out. And I said, I've been telling you that it could happen to you. You're doing it right. What? Yeah, that's a lot of energy. I see a flash of light, and then I don't remember. That's energy moving into your brain. In the beginning, it scares people because they don't know what they're losing control. But that's a good squirt of energy making it into your brain. Now, then the body will adapt because it'll be able to process a greater frequency. But when it first happens, it scares a lot of people because it's just raw energy moving back. So, gamma happens when there's an enormous amount of energy or release into the brain. Gamma happens at times, even when you open your heart, you'll see spurts of gamma. When I say certain words, when we are doing a meditation, I can say a certain word and the brain scientists can tell you we could have 14 people having their brain scanned and they all go into gamma at the same time. All of them. Because they're associating those words. And that's exactly what I want to have happen. So as a facilitator, so we study that. We study the best way to communicate. But building the model with gamma and different frequencies, it's better for you to look at a light spectrum. You know, the whole spectrum of light from the slowest radio waves all the way up to gamma waves and cosmic waves, and turn it this way, and it would be closer to the frequencies that the body processes in those centers. Slow ones down here, faster here, faster here, faster here, faster all the way up. Anyway, there's no linear correlation like that. It's more about just the movement of energy. The slower ones, matter density. There's a lot of energy wrapped around an atom. When the atom starts to release like an atomic bomb, that's energy being released in the same way.